Okay, so welcome back to another episode of Finding Your Way with Lori and Tonya. We are super excited you're here. So if you are a first-time listener, listen, we wholeheartedly believe that you found us for a reason. So welcome, and we hope you enjoy this episode. If you are a returning listener for us, we so appreciate you listening to us, and we hope that we've been able to help. This is a series that we're doing talking about the 8 essential areas of life, rating yourself and being really honest with yourself about where you are in those 8 most important pieces of your life. Then last episode, we talked about taking that to market. How do you look at those numbers? And if it's not a 10, what makes it a 10? How do you make those 8 areas in your life a 10? So it's about dreaming and writing down those dreams and dreaming big. So if you're listening to this one, we hope that, and if you hadn't listened to the 2 prior, go back and listen to those 2, because this is just to tag along to that. So we've written down now on those 8 areas, big dreams in each area. And so today we're going to talk about setting some goals around those dreams. So what do we need to do? And there's going to be a lot of different goals that you have to accomplish to get to the big dream 10, right? And so it's just how do we pick a goal? How do we get started? Everybody looks at the dream and they go, oh, it's so daunting. How do I get there? Well, we get there one step at a time, one goal at a time. And so that's what today's about. It's picking one goal. So one area of life, or you can pick 2 areas of life, and then one goal that you can accomplish in the next 6 months to a year. Let's be successful. And then you do the next goal to go along with it, right? So we're talking about one goal.
Yeah, so they say that a dream with no action is just an idea, right? So this is taking those dreams and that vision we have of what we want our life to be like in every area of our life, and starting to just let down just a little bit and put it in writing so that we mean business, right? We mean business, and we're going to sit down and take the time to put something in writing and put a goal in place that we're striving to achieve, and it's doable. We'll get there. We'll get there much more likely than if we just put our dreams up on, you hear people doing vision boards and just not taking any action. And it doesn't work that way. You have to do the steps to get there. And so goal setting is one of the major steps, because it provides that clarity on where the thing you can do in the near term to get you to that big dream. And so what we want to be sure we do with goals, though, all we're doing is setting what are we going to do by when. That's basically what a goal is. We're just putting it in writing. And so we have learned that you do need to choose a date. And like Tonya said, between 6 months to a year is usually pretty reasonable, because that gives you enough time to achieve something relatively large, but not so much time that it falls off of your radar.
Right.
And so think about within these areas of life. So for instance, for me, within the environmental area of life, which is about your space, your home, your car, your workspace, wherever you're spending time, and how that then impacts your life. I had a big dream about wanting my house to be cozy and comfortable and welcoming and inviting to people, and clean and tidy, and just like it makes you feel good when you walk in, right? That's like my big dream. And I can visualize that. I can write down in perfect detail what that looks like in my mind. That's not where I was. So I was going home to live in a place that had a lot of clutter. We had stuff stacked up in the garage. We had things that we had not attended to, like stuff that probably had needed to be shredded or thrown away or whatever. My baseboards had dust on them. I was overwhelmed because I was working full time, doing stuff on the side, other responsibilities. And then it was feeling like this huge, heavy burden when I'd come home, and it's like, well, my weekend, I got to spend cleaning my house because that's the only time I have. So it's like I'm working on the weekend just as hard at doing things that I don't enjoy. So I set a 6-month goal I got to find me somebody to clean my house, and I need to give myself permission to do that. I've got money, pay somebody and take that burden off of myself. That was something that I felt like would have helped me to feel better in the current home, regardless of anything else. And so I sat down and I wrote a date that I would hire a house cleaner by. And you can't just leave it there. You can't just say, I will find a reliable, affordable house cleaner to begin deep cleaning my house by November 20th of this year.
And so but you were very, like, you very specific. So
yes.
First of all, let's be very specific about the goal. She didn't just say, I want a housekeeper, right?
Right.
Very specific about what kind of housekeeper and when. Very specific.
That, and I think too, the other things I wrote down were, but say it was November 20th. By November 20th of this year, I will have hired a reliable, affordable house cleaner to make my home feel tidy and warm and comfortable. Like I put in my goal why I wanted that, because that's sort of getting me to that big picture dream of having a home where I come to and it's like my refuge and my sanctuary, right? And so wrote the goal out, but then I had to take action steps to get there. She wasn't going to just plop in my lap, right?
Right.
So I had to do my research. And so I did research. I put some messages out on Facebook, like, hey, anybody in the area have somebody you could recommend? Reached out to some friends. Hey, didn't you have somebody that cleaned your house? Are they still available? What have you heard about this person? And then had to actually follow through with the initial appointment and get my money situated so that I'd be able to pay. So did all of that. And while I was doing all of that and hadn't gotten the house cleaner yet, the other things I did was I looked at my environment where it was right then and said, well, what are some things I can do that don't take my whole weekend? Can I clean this drawer out? Can I, instead of putting that pair of socks that's got a hole in it back in the drawer, can I just go ahead and throw those away? Like little things every day that also is getting me to that big vision. So, the result is a cleaner house, a tidier house, and you have these shorter term goals to get you there, but then you have those daily or even weekly actions to even get you to the 6-month goal.
Absolutely. And it's the action steps. I mean, and you think about them, I mean, it's like taking little baby steps to get here, and then you're on the landing, right? And then some more baby steps and you rest again. You're on the landing because you accomplished it. Some more baby steps until you get here. And so, I think when we walked away from that retreat, I sat down a couple of weeks later and went back through our notebook and came across that. And I said, okay, I'm gonna pick one or two of these, and I've got to get started. Because we come off this high of this weekend, but I had to pick something. And for me, the heaviness was coming from somewhere, and I had to go that route first. And so, as I was looking back at some of the things I had dreamed and what could make everything a 10, I realized there was a common denominator. I got to be happy first. I got to figure out which one of these I work on that can bring me some joy, and then once I'm in that joy pocket, I can start working on other things because it makes it easier. So. For me, it was relationship. I looked at and read and reread probably 100 times what I had envisioned a level 10 relationship to look like. And I did some soul searching, and, I realized that I had to start taking some action. I'd been married for about 19 years, and it had not been great for quite a few. And for every reason I could name that everybody else could name, same reasons. If you're in that situation now that you're naming right to yourself, I had all those reasons, and it was finally time for me to start figuring it out. And so I reread it probably 100 times, and I said, okay, I can't get there with this relationship. So my first goal, and I remember calling Lori and saying, all right, I'm doing this. And it was probably September, end of September, 1st of October. And I called Lori and I said, okay, I'm doing this. Actually, that's not true. It was probably 6 months later. We went to the thing in September. So about 6 months later, I'd finally said, I'm going to do it. And I wrote down that I will be separated by December 31st, 2017. And then I wrote a little bit more around that. So I would be separated and feel relieved and happy, and that everybody involved would understand and feel that it was a greater good for all. Because it was really important to me that my now ex-husband and that my kids all understood where this was coming from. It definitely was not out of the blue, but I wanted to make sure. So I wrote some feelings behind it. I needed everybody to feel a certain way. I wanted everybody to be as okay with it as you can with a divorce, right? But I gave myself a date. And then I said, okay, so what are my action steps? And I remember, the first thing I did when I gave myself that date is I was like, okay. So I went in and I was like, all right, so I've got to get my finances in order. So I started creating a budget around just my income, not that there's a whole lot else, but just, if it was just me. And then I started creating a schedule around how to get my boys where they needed to be, with it just being me. And then I sat down and messaged some friends and asked if they'd have time for a call. I needed to understand that they had been through a divorce and what that looked like. Everybody's story is different. And so I wanted to be ready with some different understandings of different ways it could go. And then I needed to kind of hear that they were happy now, because I think for me, I needed that emotional, okay, this is going to be okay. So I remember having those conversations, and then I started asking some friends for their attorneys information. And then I started talking to a couple of attorneys. And then I'd given myself another step of, I'm going to have the conversation on this date. And I guess it was September, October. I talked to Lori. And so I think it was like around October 1st, I went to the husband and we sat down and I said, okay, this is over. We both know it, but I got to call it, right? So we had a really mature conversation, and I said, I need you out by December 31st. I will help you get there. But this has to happen. And this is the date. And he agreed. And I said, I would be fine for us giving our kids one last family Christmas. I said, but the day after Christmas, we got to tell them, and you got to be out by the 31st. And so we had that conversation. And after it was over, a couple of days later, I took the next action step, which I hired an attorney. And so I also started planting some seeds with my kids. We wanted to tell them after Christmas, but I didn't want it to be out of the blue. So we both kind of started having some conversations around, what it would look like. And then we had the kid conversation on the day after Christmas. And then honestly, December 31st, literally, we moved him out of my house and into an apartment. And so big goal, divorce is a big goal. And there are a lot of low action steps. And there are a lot of times that I had to rest. It took me about a year to get from me saying, okay, Lori, I'm going to do this, to him moving out. And there are a lot of rest points in between that, but I kept going. And every time I did one thing, it motivated me to take the next step, which motivated me to take the next step. And so, goals can be fun. And we talked about like what's working and then what's not working. And so in order to get to this relationship that I'm still looking for, but in order to get there, I had to identify what wasn't working and get that out of my energy so that I could start taking some more steps to this dream.
And it's not easy. And I mean, yours is a heavy one. It's difficult for anybody. But I think there's some kind of psychological shift in our minds when we commit to ourselves. We make a decision and we put it in our own handwriting and we choose a date. There's no right or wrong, right? But it's once you've decided, it sets things in motion to where even if it's difficult, like what you just went through, for some reason, it alleviates the uncertainty of it because you've decided and you have sort of line in the sand, right? We've drawn a line in the sand and said, this enough. Like if I want the big dream, the big vision that I feel I deserve, I got to do this. Whether it's cleaning your house, getting divorced, losing weight, saving money, meeting new people, like whatever your goals are to get you to the life that you want and desire. There is something magical about it, going from a dream and a vision to, once you set that goal, and especially when you put that feeling behind it. And I think the thing is that deciding point. So once you make a decision and a commitment to yourself, that's what the goal is about. It is your signature on your own piece of paper, because the goal isn't for anybody but you. And so it's like you're making, like Tonya and I have talked about, when we first started, we didn't feel worth getting to the big vision. But I think once you do some of the work, like we've talked about on our podcast, it gets to a point where you do feel worthy, and you feel worthy of that big dream and that desire that you have in your heart for better and for more. And a goal is the pivot point, I think, from taking it from a dream to actually making it happen. Because once you've decided and you've got the date and everything, the action steps sort of come naturally. You know that you sort of know what the action steps are to get you there.
That's right. And every time you check off an action step, it's a win.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so you didn't have to, the 6 month or the year, that's the big win, but you get these little wins along the way that gives you that second wind, right? That keeps pushing you forward and pushing you forward. And even when it's a tough, and sometimes it's a fun goal, you know, that's great too. I want to go to Vegas. And so here's what I got to do to be able to go do that, you know, but it's that small win each time that really kind of helps move you forward, and it's getting there. And then it doesn't change. So my goal is I've still got this big dream goal, this big ass goal I want. And I've gotten a big chunk of it now. I've gotten there. I'm probably halfway there now, if not more. And so then what's next? And so once you accomplish that goal, then you piggyback off and you say, okay, what's next? What's the next thing I've got to do to get to here? And so it's something you're always working toward. But it feels really good. Even just those little teeny action steps every time is a win.
Yeah. And like we've talked about before, once you reach that goal, so like once I reached the house cleaner goal, you know, now we've got goals to find a piece of property and build our dream home. And so, you know, we set that in motion by putting a big goal for that. That takes a little bit of time, right? And so we've done all of our research and the fun things of looking at the house designs and things like that, and come to some consensus on that. We've gone out and ridden to properties and walked properties and talked to realtors and done those things. Those are the action steps that are just providing that momentum to propel you forward to reaching that goal, even if it's a year out. So we've talked about 8 essential areas. We've talked about dreaming, what a 10 is like in those areas. And now we've talked about how to get there. Seriously, setting small goals, taking action steps. And as you accomplish those and continue to do so, you can turn those 2s and 3s into 10s. You just can, and it can happen. You just have to commit to it. And we're here to help. You know, that's what we do. That's what we do. So we do it. We've seen it. We live it. We would not be sitting here today had 6 years ago. This weekend was 6 years. Lori, did you realize? This weekend was 6 years. 6 years ago, we started this journey, and where we are now from where we started is just amazing. And like I said, I mean, it's been 6 years and I've still got this big goal, right? I mean, and I have not given up on it. It's going to happen. So take your time, but not too much time. Write those goals, write them down, commit to yourself, and you can do it. So the next podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about how to supercharge getting there. You know, we've talked about how to get there, right? And then there are some other things that we can do to help you get there too. So we're going to talk about those in the next episode. So stick with us and join us next week.